See, I think I finally figured things out, or at least I'm close to doing so. We've talked a lot about the problem with Ted, i.e., he's totally a con artist fixated on this con that is centered around finding the one, with which is not only hoodwinked quite a significant number of women he's gotten within the show, he's also been able to do so to we, the audience. So, yes, we know what the problem is with Ted. But now, however, I would like to talk about the problem of Ted, by which I'm referring to his own personal problem slash core character flaw, which basically boils down to Ted's lack of self worth and how it manifests itself in his relationships. And before you express any skepticism with regards my words, especially since Ted moves through the series like his God's gift to women who should be just as desperate and eager to be caught in the idealism of love as he is, which on the surface doesn't read like someone who lacks self-worth, but I beg to differ. And the episode I want to talk about today shines quite the light on this particular flaw. I am, of course, referring to how I Met Your Mother Season 4, Episode 16, titled Sorry Bro, or as I prefer to call it, the Karen episode. Of course, before we talk all about this core bit of character flaw for Theodore Evelyn Mosby, if this is your first time on my channel or your first time stumbling upon this particular series of mine, hello, I'm Noria, and welcome to my How I Met Your Mother video series where I am currently documenting my first time ever watch of the show while sharing my thoughts as I go along in a stream of consciousness style analysis where I talk about these characters and their choices, try to analyze their behavior and make guesses about how events might play off in the future based off of my thoughts on how the story is progressing and what I'm learning about these characters with every new episode I watch. As such, I will like to reiterate that this really is my first time watching the show, and I have so far been able to stay away from all discussions as it pertains to How I Met Your Mother and its characters. So, what you are in fact getting really is a blind reaction to a series that finished airing years ago. And from what I have been able to gather so far, you all have enjoyed watching me take in this show and the characters as I guess my way in the dark about how things might play out or have played out. And as such, I would like to ask that you please continue to abstain from dropping any spoilers in the comments. I appreciate the work you all have put in so far in keeping things spoiler free for me. Thank you. If you do want to say something that addresses a point I made, but which veers into spoiler territory, just give the spoilers ahead warning followed by a bunch of asterisks so I don't accidentally get spoiled while scrolling by your comment, and so I can ignore said comments whilst other subscribers or non-subscribers who are watching my video can interact with whatever comment you've left, and you all can chat about how right or wrong I am and what I successfully noticed or didn't notice with regards what I've said. And for those who are keeping track, I have currently watched up to How I Met Your Mother Season 4, Episode 16. Plus, if this is your first time stumbling on one of these videos, kindly know that I do have a format where I split the video into three parts: the intro, the synopsis, and then finally my thoughts. As such, I have included timestamps to help you navigate this video as you so choose. But before I get into the synopsis part of the video, I would like to say a big thank you to my lovely patrons and YouTube members whose support have been pretty instrumental in helping me continue to make content, especially since I started doing this full time at the start of last year, which was the last time I was in paid employment. And a special shout out to Lina, Sherry, Kat, and Holly for their extra support. You get all the hearts and kisses too. Mwah. If you too would like to support me on Patreon or become a YouTube member to enjoy certain perks, maybe even get a shout out, the link to do so is in the description bar. And with that said, How I Met Your Mother Season 4, Episode 16 kicks off with Ted sharing the downsides of Robin finally having gotten herself a job thanks to the brilliant work that Barney did with her resume. By the way, P.S. I wanted to do a video on the Ponsible episode, but it was a bit rambly, so I dropped it. I'm sorry. Anyway, as I was saying, Robin has a job now, which means she can thankfully remain in the States, but unfortunately, no good thing comes without its downsides. And in this case, the big one is that she's on a morning show, and early morning show. Think 4 a.m. morning show, which in turn means that she has to head to work at 2 in the morning, which then means that when the gang is still drinking at McLaren's at the end of the night, she's making plans to head to work at the station, a situation that has meant that Robin has been falling a bit behind in being aware of what is going on in her friends' lives, and she desperately urges them to fill her in, and they do. Barney is quick to tell her all about Marshall's hilarious troubles where he got so distracted that he forgot his pants at home, which meant that after he was done working out at the gym, Marshall had to sneak his way back to his office in a suit jacket and gym shorts. Clearly, that is not a work attire that would fly with HR. So Marshall immediately calls Lily to help him grab his pants at home and bring it to the office. Unfortunately, though, Lily is running late, so she pops into the bank and hands the pants over to Barney, asking him to pass it on to Marshall since she has to go. This choice, this decision ends up being a disastrous one since Barney, the utter gremlin that he is, decides to cut up Marshall's pants into this short, which he has to put on for his office presentation. Like, on one hand, that was foul. But on the other hand, the Oliver Twist, can I have some more pants joke actually made me laugh. Amidst this tale of Marshall's pants disaster, Ted shares information that Lily and Marshall consider even more disastrous. You see, Ted's college girlfriend Karen is back in town, and Lily and Marshall can't stand her. The girl is pretentious as hell and has a known practice of treating Ted, who is down bad for her, like shit. But because Ted is in love, every time Karen cheats and they break up, they end up making up right afterwards. And this yo yoing of their relationship is one that frustrates Marshall and Lily to no end. And so it will come as no surprise to anyone really that they don't receive the news of Karen being in town with any good humor. Matter of fact, their humor rapidly dwindles as Ted continues talking. You see, not only is Karen back in town, but Ted called her. And not only did he call her, he agreed to go out to lunch with her. And not only did he agree to go out to lunch with her, he even kissed her after lunch. And not only did he kiss her after lunch, but they found their way back to Ted's apartment where they had sex multiple times for multiple days. Now, where was Robin, who at this point is Ted's roommate, in all of this? Well, since her work hours had changed so drastically, Robin took to taking sleeping pills so she can sleep early and be up for work early, which meant in all the times when Karen was in the apartment and she and Ted were fucking, Robin had zero idea. Now, this news is one that is infuriating to Marshall and Lily because that has always been the thing with Ted and Karen. Ted will find himself caught up in Karen's orbit and become just as pretentious and annoying as she is. But then, right at the peak of their love, he will walk in on Karen having sex with someone else in his bed, in his dorm room, which would end up with he and Karen breaking up. And just as Marshall and Lily will be about to celebrate and cheer on the fact that Karen is gone from their lives for good, Ted walked back in to break the news that he and Karen are back together again, and the cycle continues. And so, as one would expect, neither Marshall nor Lily are in any way excited about the situation and are already bracing themselves for the worst. But then that is when Ted tells them that the worst has already happened because you see, yes, Karen is still a cheater. She's still cheating, but this time around, the person she's cheating with is Ted, who has now graduated, plummeted into the role of the other man. Ted, though, tells his friends that things were different this time around as he proceeds to call Karen out on her inability to be honest with the boyfriend she's with whenever she believes the relationship has run its course, which always results in her cheating on said boyfriend. When they had been in college, that boyfriend was Ted. Now that they are adults in their 30s, the boyfriend is someone else, but she's still acting the same way and he walks away from her, head held high. Ted is, of course, feeling very proud of himself, especially with how he told of Karen and how she took his words to heart and actually had a conversation with her boyfriend before breaking up with him. The gang is initially proud of Ted until Lily's brain screeches to a halt and she asks the very important question. If Ted had walked away from Karen and promised to never see her again or talk to her again, how exactly did he know that Karen had a conversation with her boyfriend and broke up with said boyfriend? This question leads to Ted admitting the truth. Yes, Karen has broken up with her boyfriend because she now has a new boyfriend, Ted, and she's on her way to meet the rest of the McLaren 5 at McLaren. News that fills every single one of them with irritated exasperation. The end. Honestly, When I finished the episode, the first thought in my head was that God's Ted Mosby really is the kind of guy who finds himself changing personality wise based off of whichever woman he's actively seeing and in love with at the time. And that says so much about his sense of self worth, and self pride. Because if you keep changing who you fundamentally are with each relationship, i.e., become such a pretentious twat because you are dating a pretentious twat, then it begs the question of if you actually know who you really are. And that is a very important question to consider when you realize that Ted is on a journey desperate to find is one, something that can't really happen until he's found himself first. Now, before any of you roll your eyes that I'm talking in relationship cliches about you have to love yourself first before you can love someone else, I would like to point out that it's a cliche because there is an element of truth to it. Finding yourself or knowing yourself and therefore accepting who you are is the first step in figuring out how that then works in tandem with the person you intend want to love and want to have in your life. But sorry, I am getting ahead of myself. Like I said earlier, How I Met Your Mother season 4 episode 16 titled Sorry Bro, as I like to think it, or as I think it should have been more aptly named, the Karen episode is one that does take the time to really highlight the big problem that Ted as a character has, and that is his low sense of self and self worth, that in turn bleeds into every relationship, or at least most of the relationship we've seen him get into in the show so far. Like, let's look at the most recent one of his escapades, dearest Karen, who, in her words, can't really verbalize what she wants or doesn't want as far as relationships are concerned, but she's quite adept at being pretentious as hell when it comes to wines, books, and art. She's very verbose in that regard. I think it says a lot that Ted points Karen as being the first woman he was in love with, his first love. And I know once again it's cliche as hell, but there is an element of truth to the saying that you don't really ever forget your first love. And it's not just because of the sex, but more in terms of the fact that the scars we pick up from our first love is one that never really truly heals, or at best it would scab over and you find yourself barely dealing with it or processing it, and it stays with you. Because more often than not, when you experience your first love, it's when you're still figuring out who you are, what you think you're worth, how deserving of love you think you are, all shrouded within the innocence and purity and naivety of that experience, the enormity of all those emotions coming to bear for the first time for you, all of which makes it very easy therefore for the wounds that we get from our first love to hit and settle and end up shaping the kind of person that we become afterwards. Some people become more jaded, some people become more closed off. And then you have people, characters like Ted Mosby, whose relationship with Karen shaped two separate aspects of his character because he was so consumed by his love for her. He lost his identity and sense of self. And so, like Lily and Marshall accused him of being, he was basically relegated into a Karen like clone where all he did was tailor his personality and interest to reflect Karen's. I mean, I already did a video on this back with Stella when Ted forced himself to pretend to like a book because he thought that it was a book Stella enjoyed. And the minute she expressed her disdain for it, he immediately echoed it. I mentioned it back then that it seemed like Ted's personality gets subsumed in the women he was seeing at the time. And having met Karen and realizing that she was his first love, it all comes together and makes so much more sense. God damn it. I can't believe I was right. Actually, yes, I get it because the threads were there, but at the same time, it's so satisfying being right, you know? But yeah, sorry, I digressed. As I was saying, Karen shaped two aspects of Ted's character. The part of his character where he's so consumed by his love and desire for her that he loses his own sense of identity and self, and also the part where he's so desperate to be the one for her, the one she chooses, the one she loves, and gets to be all encompassing for her as she is for him. But unfortunately for Ted, he never got that with Karen. Her pretentious ass loved herself more than anyone else and was always actively cheating on him. But because he loved her so much and kept hoping that every time would be different and she would finally recognize that he is the one for her, and she would thus stop fucking other people whenever she gets the chance, and she would in turn love only him, he kept coming back to her, even amidst the infidelity, even amidst the clear proof that she didn't respect him or love him or choose him. And so, because of that scar, he's been desperate ever since to find his one, the one for him. And that then bleeds into his characterization. It's so interesting because, like I said in the title and in the earlier part of this video, that is the problem he needs to work with. If this was real world, real life, then his therapist. It's his therapist's problem, one that Ted would be paying them astronomical sums to help him walk through and resolve. But within the context of the show, it gives so much more of a characterization for Ted and makes me understand him a bit more, be more empathetic towards him, feel some pity towards him, even though it's still not going to change the fact that just because his ass is dealing with his therapy issues doesn't take away the fact that he's been screwing over these women he's been with because, Ted Mosby. But yes, as I was saying, the episode gives so much clarity to Ted as a character for me and why he is so desperate to find is one. His relationship with Karen left him with a desperate desire to be seen and chosen. And that desperation is what we see couched as romance within the show, which in turn reflects his low self-esteem and self-worth. I mean, let's take the first serious relationship we get to see Ted experience in season one, Victoria. Now, I know someone is about to say that, what do you mean by Ted exhibited low self-worth when he was with Victoria? That isn't the case. And to them, I would say, what else would you call Ted's incessant need to find the one, if not his absolute desperate desire to be loved, which reflects his lack of self-worth and self-pride, which then manifests in his absolute refusal to, or inability to fully grasp that the women he's chasing are not all in as far as their relationship with him goes, which in turn leads back into his heartbreak and him being right back to square one from the very beginning. And I'll be the first to admit it that it's not really obvious right out the bat because the show and society as a whole would have us read Ted's actions as being romantic in the events as they played out. He met a gorgeous woman at a wedding. They had a connection that had him unable to let go. And so therefore, he ignored everything that said woman had told him, the rules of engagement that she had laid out upon their first meeting within which their time together had occurred. And instead, he set out to find her. The music, the way the scene is shot at the end, is meant to have us all swooning. But if you look at his actions within the context of it going against what Victoria had said categorically that she wanted or didn't want, then it read more as Ted bulldozing his way into this woman's life when from the onset she had been kind of clear with regards what she actually truly wanted from him. A magical experience that ends when they both walk away at the end. Self-respect would say, you know what? She laid out the rules. If she wants us to have something more, she would reach out since she knows I'm friends with the bride and the groom. Ted cannot do that though because Ted is desperate and he's always going to be willing to throw away his self-pride for the potential of finding the one. And as we know it, his relationship with Victoria didn't last long because, she is not the one. And we see something similar happening with Robin. They had a brief moment. Ted tells her immediately afterward that he loves her, like on their second meeting. And she's rightfully weirded out and nopes out of whatever Ted has going on. Does he take that as the L that it is and walks away? No, if he did, it wouldn't be Ted Mosby now, would he? And before anyone else says, well, it's because Ted is confident in himself and doesn't want to give up on a great girl, yada, 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 I would like to reiterate that the show tends to couch Ted's lack of self-worth and self-respect that would see a normal, emotionally regulated person respond to someone they are attracted to, walking away or not giving them the time of day by leaving said person be because they, you know, they know who they are, they know their own worth, and ideally are not about to go chasing after someone to beg them to love them or give them a chance. And even though the show tends to present Ted's actions as being romantic or, not giving up in the face of love, it is bullshit. Romance stories have for so long colored our perception of what the ideal response to someone not really giving us the time of day should be. Ideally, you walk away. Ted Mosby responds instead by strong arming his way through, and that has always been disastrous as far as his relationships have been concerned because Due to his desperate desire for love and to be chosen, which, god damn it, Karen did a number on this man, it's meant that Ted would always give more in said relationship than the women he's convinced himself are the one for him. Is literally forcing them to be his one. It happened with Robin. It happened with Stella. You all might disagree with me, but I still repeat, he spent 10 sessions with her trying to get her to agree to go on a date with him, for Christ's sake. And yes, I do agree that the quick 2 minute date was sweet and romantic, but at the same time, I also will acknowledge the fact that Stella initially didn't want any of that. Their relationship is built so much on Ted's assumptions, that his incessant need to push Stella into what he wants, all for the sake of trying to fit this image that he wants of their relationship together. And ultimately, just like with all the others, it comes to blow up in his face. If you have to ask someone to go out with you 10 times before they say yes, I don't know, maybe find some self respect and just let it go. Because it's going to come back and bite you in the ass when you've made the decision to relocate to New Jersey for them, only for your ass to be left on the altar so they can be reunited with their ex. But of course, these are just my thoughts. I would, as always, love to hear yours. Whether or not you agree with me, please share them in the comments. Like this video, however, if you've watched this far and haven't done so yet, but enjoyed anything of what I had to say, share it so others can find my channel as well. Or you can check out my gaming or ASMR channels if they sound like something you might be interested in. I have them both linked in the description bar. I will see you on Monday with a new video. Until then, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.